Show time. And let me tweet about it because we always do better if I tweet about it. I'm
I've
gonna
got an
type.
interesting thing to kick this off with.
Yeah, let's do it.
I've been having electrical problems at the house.
Oh no. Like you're having to look at
Like
wires.
like there's some sparks in the breaker box as I was like looking at things the other day, and
Oh
so
no.
that's above my pay grade, and I have an electrician coming out today.
Oh no. That's so scary.
It is, yeah, because I was like trying to troubleshoot this outlet that wasn't working, and I replaced the outlet, I replaced the breaker,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
and then like we plugged something in it, and like there was a spark in the breaker box. And I was like, I'm done. Like in the middle of like 30 wires, in that metal
Oh
box.
no. Oh, you have an engineering background.
Yeah, but none of that electrical stuff really took. This is why I write software now.
I think we blew a fuse like a month ago or something, and I was like, I don't even know where our breaker box is.
It was bad. Like when the spark happened, like 6 breakers tripped and like half the house turned off, and it had
No.
some weird effects because everything that I have behind like a really good power strip or surge protector was fine, but it like completely reset my router, which is really weird. So I had to go back in, reconfigure that. Oh yeah, it was a pain. As long as a fire doesn't start between,
Oh
now and
my
when the guy
goodness.
shows up.
Shoo. Did you guys have a snow day yesterday?
Yeah, we did. There wasn't much snow on the ground. It was like,
Southern snow
not
day.
even an eighth of an inch, but yeah, they canceled school.
That's so funny. Okay, I'm gonna click post. There we go. The tweet is live. Hopefully they'll come. Hilarious. Let's see. I was going to pull up some of these things. So for people that are already here, I think there's like 2 of you. Not really. There's a few more. But when we were planning the show notes for today's episode, I have so many things that I want to talk about. And so I was like, we can have some of this in the pre-show, and then we can focus the main bulk of the show on Raycast just so that it's more focused. We're not all over the place as my brain feels right now. But I'll share this. This is a good time to talk about this. So, as you know, Brad, I made an announcement January 1 that I was going to build 12 projects, and I'm still like dedicated. This is like my do or die goal for this year, but I'm like so far behind, and I feel the pressure of having 9 more days in the month. So I've been I don't want to say bogged down, but bogged down with a side project that I committed to previously that I've got to get over the finish line. So, but what's interesting is this is a Next.js project, and it's Next.js 15, the app router. And oh man, like I've been slightly a little skeptical of RSC just because it's been so hard for us to implement it at Redwood.
Yeah,
And it's like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? It is worth it.
it's
It
good.
is so worth it. But like when I think about it, I'm like, I can also understand some of the perks that you get with RSC, why the remix team was like, we kind of already have this. And so I can kind of understand their shift, which I think is just really forward thinking of Michael and why can't I think of their name?
Ryan.
Yes, Ryan. And we had Brooks on last week talking about RSC and everything, but just like their whole data loader pattern, because you kind of have a similar pattern when you're dealing with server side components.
Yeah, you kind of do. I think that the main difference and the main downside is that um, all those loaders and actions are tied to URLs, whereas with
Yep.
RSCs, it's component based, and I can
Yep.
see the value in that because
Yep.
it makes like each npm package that you can install that much more valuable. Oh, you
Yes.
want to npm install Stripe? It's like bloop, like that is
Yes.
probably going to get way better.
Well, and I was thinking about that because you can make server calls directly within your components. You
Right.
could just say, like, here's your Stripe component. Like, you don't even have to
Right.
touch it. You just include it on the page and it can
Right.
handle everything, which I mean, you know, blow your mind. It's
Yeah,
going to be crazy.
that could be cool. So how is it like coming back to JavaScript land?
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to like Laravel so much. I do. They've been around forever. They just received a ton of funding. I really like Taylor. I think when they call him the benevolent dictator, I feel like he is a very benevolent, like emphasis on the benevolent part of that. And so I want to see them succeed. And I just really struggled. And some of it could be me, some of it could come down with time. I've wondered if I did a deep dive with Josh. Josh was on the podcast a couple months ago talking
Yeah.
about Laravel and stuff like that. And he's kind of a convert going from JavaScript to Laravel. But if they sat down with me with Livewire and Alpine and just like, this is how you should handle everything, if that would be easier. But for me, trying to cobble together and go from PHP to Blade, their templating language, to Livewire, to Alpine, you have like, that's like 4 or 5 different languages and templates that you're having to work through in order to display your data. And it's like, this is why people want JavaScript front to back.
Yeah.
Kind of the turning point for me was I hit an error with the database and I could not, it took me a day to figure this out, and AI figured it out before I did, which I was really grateful for. But with Laravel, you don't, yes, it is PHP, and PHP is a typed language, but it's not really the same as like JavaScript, TypeScript. And so if this had been in TypeScript, it would have caught this immediately. But
Mhm.
what had happened was I had set up the database and I had the ID field as an integer. And I think this is right. Yep, I had the ID field as an integer. And when I set up my seeds, I had set, is this how? Yes, I had set them up with strings, but the strings that I happened to use were numbers. So all of my seed data worked. And then when I tried to add a user, I tried to do it with a UUID, and it kept falling over, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't add users and why my existing, like anybody that I had tried, they couldn't log in. And I was like, but these
Yeah.
people are logging in. They're not having any trouble, but it's because I explicitly seeded the data. And it just so happened that the IDs I passed, yes, they were strings, but they were also numbers. So it worked.
Oh,
So, trying to figure that out was not fun.
yeah.
So that was kind of like the tipping point for me. Was this like TypeScript would have figured this out in a heartbeat, and it wouldn't have even made it through the build process.
Yeah. I have a question for you. When you're doing IDs in a database, are you like a integer start from one kind of
Oh,
person, or are you a UUID person?
oh, good question. So I don't know if this you can. I'm not a database expert. We should have like Aaron Francis answer this question, or I'd be curious what your perspective is. What I do is if it's data that is going to be hidden and inaccessible to the user, there's no way it's not going to show up in a URL, it's not going to show up in an ID or like
Sure.
in the
Yeah.
page. I will use a number. If it's something that the user sees, then I will use a UUID. And so
Whoa,
that might
I would have
create
expected that to be reversed.
problems because sometimes it's like, what did I do? Did I use an integer or a number? But I mean, a
Mm.
string. Maybe it would just be easier if I would be consistent, probably, as I'm talking about this.
I would have thought
But
if you were gonna show something to a user, you'd want like a 1, a 2, a 3, and not like 30 character UUID of junk.
yeah, so it is junky. And I don't default that. But if, like I said, if there's a
Uh-huh.
chance that's going to leak, here's the reason why is because if you use a number, they can guess that. If you have a smart user, you can
Yeah.
say, oh, there's
Yeah.
3. I'm going to guess what 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is.
Yeah.
And I don't want to risk that.
I I typically always use UUIDs kind of for that aspect. Like an ID
Uh-huh.
should be this thing that nobody needs to see or care about, and
Yep.
it needs to be very unique. Um, I just like that. Like if you do use integers, like historically, you can be like, this is the first user, and everybody knows
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I mean, there are instances where I'll use a slug where it's like, okay, this is going to
Yeah.
be a unique parameter.
Yeah.
So when I mentioned this next 15 project, I'm also building it with Supabase. This is relevant because the hardest part about this project is TypeScript. Because what happens is I have these really complicated nested queries coming out of Supabase. And
Uh-huh.
so Supabase types, you can have Supabase generate your types, which is really helpful,
Yeah.
but it struggles when it's nested and you start picking and choosing fields.
Oh
Um,
man.
I set up all of my migrations using Prisma, and Prisma will also generate types.
Yep.
So I've been leaning more towards the Prisma types, but it's still like been pulling teeth trying to figure out, okay, I'm trying to like reference data on that they've generated, like types that they've generated, but also then take that and create and cobble my own based on what I know the query is.
Yes.
And it's so messy. I'm like, there has
Yes.
to be a better way. There has to.
Yeah, I ran into the exact same thing. When you
Okay,
want to
good.
be efficient in your database query and you're using some nesting to grab a little bit of extra data, and then you want to take that chunk of data and reuse that type elsewhere, like pass it into a
Mhm.
function that accepts it, that's a little weird. Then you have to like
Mhm.
define a Prisma query, and then there's like this function you can call to get the type output. But it just doesn't feel clean. And then
Yep.
if you want to somehow split that and make your own types, it's like, well, it's not a Prisma user type because that's like
Yep.
the database entry. So you're almost still writing your database types and your app types if you're really like using complex stuff. If it's all simple, you can
It's
just
so
use the Prisma
hard.
types. But yeah.
Well, and there's issues with Prisma in Next because with their hot reloading, you can create tons and tons of instances of Next by accident as it hot reloads.
Oh,
So there is a post or like official documentation within Prisma where it's like if you're using a Next 15 app, in development create a global Prisma object that you then reference. So it's not having to create all these multiple instances. And I was still struggling to get all that stuff working. So I just decided to go with the Supabase SDK because I was already using that for auth for the database and the storage. So
yeah.
yeah, it's been a good learning experience. But I mean, RSCs is the way.
Did you run into any of the caching problems, or do you think now they fixed it when because they don't cache by default?
Yeah, I think it's fixed.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that got me. So, with Next 15, you can use all the new hooks that you get with React 19, and
Mhm.
there's some hooks and things that, like, I didn't necessarily have a use case for. Maybe they've been around longer. I just haven't needed them. And so the documentation is good in that it focuses on defining what that hook is. But the thing is, those hooks have to work together with other hooks and other functions. And that is not documented. So I wasted a good chunk of time trying to figure out how those pieces work together. So let me explain.
Yeah.
If you have, let's see, how would this work? If you are trying to do things optimistically, which when you use their use optimistic hook, it is so snappy. It's amazing. But their use optimistic hook is very similar to use state, except you can kind of like shove multiple pieces of state in there and have like a more complex function in there that will update
Right.
the state.
Right.
So when you use that, you have to wrap it in a start transition so that it knows, hey, we're going to start the transition. And if this fails, then we need to be able to revert back to the old state. So that was number one. You don't
I
always
do
have to
not
do that.
I do not think I understand start transition at all at this point.
Okay. I don't think you necessarily always have, I don't think you always have to use it. I had to use it anyways to get it to work. So anyways, start transition. I think what that does is it just tells the code base, hey, we're going to start sending this off to the database. It's not like a visual transition. Well, I mean, I guess it is because you're wrapping in state, but like, hey, go ahead and update the state. And then it's going to update the database. And if the database call fails, then start transition will handle that fallback to help like send use optimistic. I guess that's how it works. But it falls back to the previous version of the state because then you'd have to know to be able to correct the state that the user sees.
The
So
way I view it is
makes
like,
sense.
okay, it's like you're sending off an asynchronous action. So you start transition.
Yep, that's
And
right.
if it fails, then React is smart enough to know not to commit that to the next render or something like that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So I ran into an issue where I was like, okay, I figured out now I have to wrap it and start transition. But then what happened was I wasn't clearing the cache in my server function. So then it would look at the
Ah,
cache and be like, but
yep.
it failed and it would revert. And so then it took me a minute to figure out, well, when it kicks off that server action, you have to update the
Invalidate.
state. Yep. You say
Mhm.
revalidate tag or revalidate page, I think is the name of the function. You call that and then it works. And it's super snappy. And it's like, oh, this is beautiful, but the docs did not do a good job of explaining how those things work together. And
Yeah.
like that's the integration piece that's missing. So,
Yeah. Yeah, because like right now when I do remix apps, I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm gonna get a full page reload, you know, and I'll work
mhm,
on optimizing that later. Whereas I feel like next in the caching story tend to get put right in front of you like as you're developing features.
mhm,
Whereas
mhm,
remix is like, it's fine. We'll just let the browser do it. We're gonna reload.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. So, anyways, it's been it's been fun. So, let's go ahead and start because
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about some Raycast plugins and specifically ones that we've developed. So, I feel like that'll be a nice transition. Let me go ahead and cue up the music. Where it is. There we go. Okay. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web design and development with a little bit of zest. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about all things Raycast, definitely a favorite application for both me and Brad.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compress.
Hello, my name is Amy Dutton. I'm a lead maintainer on the Redwood JS core team.
Hey y'all, my name is Brad Garapi and I'm a senior front end developer at Stripe.
Awesome. And so we started talking about Raycast a few weeks ago. I think because you developed a Raycast extension or contributed to one.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, longtime Raycast user at this point,
Yes.
but I was at Stripe and I was like manually filling out checkout forms over and over and over again. And I was like, that's it. I have to build something. And Raycast is the perfect like place to do this. So I extended the Stripe extension internally. And then I also open sourced that same feature in the external Stripe extension in the Raycast store. So I
That's
got a little
awesome.
bit of experience doing like extension development, but then I also have like tons of extensions installed and a lot of Raycast configurations and things like that. We actually got talking about it in our Discord the other week too.
Oh, yeah.
And Raycast Wrap just came out. So maybe we start there. Like Raycast has a
Oh,
yearly Wrapped. I just remember being blown away by how much you use Raycast.
did I use it?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I thought yours was like orders of
It is.
magnitude above mine.
I don't know about that. Some of it might be too like how I'm using it. So, like
Maybe.
certain features I use all the time. Like it's second nature and it doesn't even really feel like Raycast. So, as we talk about different ways that we use it, it's replaced a ton of applications that I would have on my computer, like Caffeinate or window management or all these other things, snippets, all that Raycast will handle. And so there's things like I have a shortcut set up on my keyboard where I hit Command Alt, no, yeah, Command Alt or Option Spacebar, and that pulls up my terminal. Wherever my terminal is, it pulls it up to the front, and that will toggle the visibility of my terminal on and off. So I use that all the time when I
Mm.
am developing. And so I feel like that kind of inflates and spikes my numbers because I can easily hit that, 20 times within 5 minutes.
Wait, what is it again? How did you set that up?
It's Command Option Spacebar, and I think that's just within like the snippets or the extensions in the settings. You can
The
set a
quick links.
hotkey for,
Yes.
yeah, that's it.
Yes.
You
Okay.
can set up a quick link within their built-in first party functionality.
Yeah, I too use it mostly to switch between applications super fast. I do not use what is it, Command Tab to
Oh,
go
really?
between applications. No,
Oh, I
I
use that
like
all the time.
I space like Command Space to open Raycast, type out what I'm thinking, Mail, Terminal,
Oh,
Safari,
that's so
and
funny.
that's how I switch apps.
Seems like there's so many more keystrokes involved. Maybe not, because then I'm like
Yeah,
tab, 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 tab.
yeah. I don't like the tab because I feel like it's too slow for me.
Okay, so how many times did you open Raycast last year?
5,346 times.
Okay, so that's not so much different than mine. I'm 8,216.
Okay. Total actions though. How many? I think your total actions were insane.
Okay,
Yeah.
13,719.
Yes. I don't know what, like, you must be doing something to make that number huge. I only
I
have
don't even know what that is.
1,100 total actions.
I don't even oh my goodness. That's
Yeah, that's what I'm
crazy.
saying.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. That's hilarious. So I also use it for, clipboard history. So
Yep.
that's another one that I get a lot of usage out of. The other one, shoo, what is that called? Open with app. Do you use that functionality? Or is that a add-on? That might be
Open
an
it with what?
add-on. It's called Open with App. And
Hmm.
so I will all the time. How do I even do this? It's like one of those things that's like these are my hotkeys. I don't even think about them. Uh, oh yeah. So if I have Finder open, I navigate to a project or a file. I have it set up where I hit Hyper O. So I've changed the cap locks key on my machine to be Control Option Command Shift. So it's a hyper key.
Mhm.
I hit Hyper O, and it triggers this thing called open with app, and then I type whatever app that I want it to open that file in. So I use that all the time, whether I'm trying
Mm.
to open a code folder into Cursor, or like I'm trying to send an image to Figma or Photoshop or wherever. I can control that through Raycast through the keyboard.
That's pretty nice. How do you select the initial folder initially? Like, you're mousing around and then Hyper O?
Yeah, it's just if I have it, like, on my desktop or on my
Gotcha.
laptop. I mean, not my laptop, my downloads folder or something like that. So I do use the Finder to select it. I don't I know when I was using Alfred, um, rest in peace, I had different keyboard commands set up to navigate through folder structures, but for whatever reason, I haven't really brought that workflow over to Raycast.
How long ago did you install Raycast? I like that they have that unwrapped.
Oh, let's see, where's that at?
On
Is
the very
that
last screen,
on the
mine
very
says I installed it 674 days ago.
Oh, I've gotta get there. Um, I'm looking for it. I don't see that.
No, on the
Oh,
very last page?
600 days ago.
600. Okay, yeah. Um,
Pretty
so
close.
I
Yeah,
have 3,000 total app launches. Are you about the same?
3 no.
Is it do you have
6,960.
Yeah,
That's funny. And that's hilarious because 'cause you're not even using the, command tab.
I would have thought I would have beat you there. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. How many extensions do you have installed?
Only 15. I don't have a
Oh,
ton.
I have 60. So some of them I've forgotten that I have. One of my most successful tweet threads when those were popular was all the extensions that I had installed with Raycast and how I was using it. And I was going
Mhm.
back through it the other day because we were talking about it in Discord. And I was like, "Oh, I forgot I could do all this."
Yeah, that's the thing. When I integrate an extension, I, like, build it into my muscle memory. But
Mm.
if I had went off and installed, like, a bunch of extensions because I thought they were cool, I would forget, like, 90% of it, you know?
That's what I did. I
And
went through their
still, like
store one day. Install, install. Yeah,
yeah,
that sounds good.
and still, like, there's extensions that I forget about where I'm like, "Dang it, I could have been doing this through Raycast. It could have been
Yeah,
easier."
yeah. Well, let's talk about a few more of our favorites. A couple more that I use a lot is I will generate random passwords. So I do have one password on my computer. I know you're bought into the whole Apple ecosystem, but sometimes
It's
their
so
extensions.
good. Their password app is so good. I'm gonna die
I'm
on that hill.
just gonna I'm gonna keep paying $4 a month, whether it's worth it or not. But, sometimes the extension will act a little funny when you are trying to generate a password, like, sometimes it'll
Mhm.
save it, sometimes it won't, and so I'll just generate the password, that way it's in my clipboard history, and then
Yeah,
I'll make sure that first or 1Password has that. So I use that. I also generate placeholder images. So if I'm working in code and I don't have an image yet, I'll just go ahead and drop, I think it uses Pixum. I'll have it generate a random image. You just put in the dimensions, the width and the height, and it'll give you a random image back.
that's awesome. I like that one.
Yeah, and then I also use it to, say, convert images. So if I have a, image on my desktop and I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is a JPEG. It would be better as a ping or vice versa. Then you can have it convert the file format for you. Or you can have it also resize. So if it's a giant image and I know I need this to be 600 pixels wide for my newsletter, I can do that directly within Raycast.
Sweet. I feel like one that I use all the time is Open Camera. It just shows it's like just shows you and your camera. So
like
I do
before a
that
meeting and stuff?
before meetings, before
Okay.
podcasts. Yeah.
Oh, nice. No, I'm just surprised.
I use ray.so to make images of code. So you can highlight a code snippet,
Oh, I haven't used that one.
use ray.so, boom, it spits out a PNG onto your clipboard.
That's nice. Do you use any of the like the hotkey ones where you can like save it within the quick start or even stick them in the menu bar?
I don't put anything in the menu bar. And then no, I don't really use hotkey stuff. Like
Okay.
I said, I like open the app, open Raycast and type in the app that I want rather than hotKeying things.
Okay.
Um,
So you don't use it for like you can do GitHub issues, have all your GitHub issues like right there in Raycast.
wait, what is this?
So let's see. I half the time forget that it's there. I have so many repos that I'm like, whatever. I think let's see if I type in my issues. Yeah, there's an extension where I type in my issues and then it'll just show all the issues that I'm been assigned to. And
Okay,
so
and then
I
you
think
just
I
put a
can.
hotkey to that pane, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah,
it lists them out in Raycast, and then I can hit enter. Oh, and then it shows all the details for
and then it
that
goes there.
issue
Yeah, that's
right
cool.
within Raycast. Yeah.
Is that the Git? No, it's not the GitHub extension. It just says my issues.
I think it's part of the GitHub extension because there's like tons of things. You can create an issue from this. You can do discussions, search the repositories. I don't use that one quite as much, even though I created a hot like a shortcut for it in the bar. But one that I found recently that I really like is Vercel's. So with the
Ooh,
Vercel one, there's an option or command to do search deployments and it will list out all of your most recent deployments. So if I'm waiting to see, did that deploy correctly? Has it gone through? Is it building? You can see all that within Raycast without having to go over to Vercel.
that's really good. I'm doing
Mhm.
that right now.
Yeah. That was like one of those I forgot about and then just recently rediscovered. And I was like, oh, this is wonderful.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Do you use any of the AI features?
I don't pay for Pro, so no.
Okay.
And I need
I
to. I'm on the
mm,
verge of, like, just buying it because the window like, the preset window stuff to be
yeah.
like, "I wanna work on my blog." Bloop, everything
Mhm.
opens, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. I that would be nice to do that, just to have everything set up with your pre-configured. So I was paying for Pro probably about 2 years ago because I was trying to change Macs and I had 2, and with Pro
Mhm.
you can sync all of your settings. So I synced everything and then I was using a lot of the AI stuff, but then I was trying to cut down on expenses. So that was one that I ended up letting go. I have gotten more into Perplexity and Claude, but even then, I'm either asking the question within the Claude or Perplexity extensions and it's shooting it off, or it's just like launching Claude or launching
Yeah,
Perplexity to do all that.
yeah. Yeah, we should, like, talk about Pro for a minute because Pro's got a couple good benefits. The sync is one, although you can
Mhm,
export and import, like, your settings, it's no big
mhm,
deal. Um, window management is really good, and then the AI stuff is essentially just cheaper than, like,
mhm.
buying subscriptions to all these things because they offer a bunch of different models right inside of Raycast.
Do you not have to put in your API key, or do
I
you
think
get
they
like
handle that for you.
okay? Because I didn't know if they would give you more credits or go faster, or you
Mm,
get if you do
that
all
I
that.
don't know.
Okay. Oh, so here's another one that, like, lives in the background that I don't even think about. I just pulled up my list. Oh, sorry. Let's talk about Frozen.
No, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
All over the place. Is Doc Tinker. So this one, you can put spaces within your doc. So I have grouped my applications. So I have like more of office admin stuff at the top. So I'm a left doc person. And then I have all my development tools grouped together in the doc. And then I have a space, and then my admin tools, and then a space, and then like any video production stuff. And then it's like whatever else is
Huh.
open that is not part of the stuff that I keep in my dock at all times.
Okay. We're talking about all these integrations that we have in our
Mhm.
system and stuff. Do you ever worry about buying in too much to one product, one company for all of your workflows?
Oh, no. I don't
No.
even I just, like, fangirl about certain companies or certain brands. I'm like, "I'm all in, it's fine."
Yeah. Raycast is the only thing that I'm like that with. Otherwise, I keep my things like pretty vanilla, pretty plain,
Mm,
pretty open.
mhm,
Raycast, I'm like slowly getting deeper and deeper where like I don't really want to work without this anymore.
mhm. Yeah, um there's certain things that, like, I was using before I merged everything into Raycast, and so it's like if Raycast went away, I feel like I could go back to a previous setup, but it would take a lot more money just because you have to pay for all those tiny apps
Hmm.
and be a lot more cumbersome, I think, to set up because they're spread across several applications than just one.
Dude, the fact that this is free blows my mind.
I know.
Um, and the one thing that I wish they would just put on the free tier is the window management, like the preset window management. Like,
That's why it's in Pro.
and I get it. It's like, sure, make me pay for AI, make me pay for cloud sync, fine. But
Mhm.
window management, come on.
Yeah. There's do you use any of the team features? Because you also get that with Pro.
No, I don't.
And because I think you can, like, also customize the way stuff looks, and then you can bring in your team and have
Mm,
different workflows and things like that. Um,
that's cool.
I so I've talked about this before, but I've set up a plop script. So if you've heard of plop.js, you can actually I have you to thank for that.
Yeah.
But I will generate files and management and stuff like that with plop.js. So I have one set up for compressed. So after the show's over, after we're done recording, I'll type CFM:live and it'll generate all the folders that I need for this episode. And so I was having to go over to the terminal, and that was just an alias that I had set up. But the other day I was like, I'm going to get this to work in Raycast. And
Yeah.
sure enough, got it to launch in Raycast. It was so easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Writing custom scripts and snippets is so easy. And then even
Yeah.
we can go into the process of building extensions. But first, before we get there, I know you're talking about Plop. Josh Goldberg just announced something that is like the successor to Plop. I think it's going
What?
to be better. Yeah. Um, but it's like it's deeper. Like,
Mm.
okay, for instance, when I generate apps, I want to be able to say, give me a remix app with or without a database
Oh, because he's working
and
on
set that up.
Yeoman.
What's that?
He's working on Yeoman. It's
Yeah, kind
YEOMAN.
of, but this is a new thing.
Oh,
Um,
he's not keeping the branding?
I think he made this from scratch. This is called
Oh, wow.
Create. So
What?
I just put it in chat.
Okay.
And so like imagine if you wanted to make an app with a bunch of like you're not picking a preset, but you're adding dynamically like adding or selecting features. Like I want a remix app with a database but no auth, or I want a remix app with auth and a database, or like and all these things like affect singular files and multiple files. And so you create this logic with this create thing where you define blocks that can be reused in templates, and it's
Interesting.
all like plug and play.
Oh, interesting. I'm gonna have to do a deep dive on this. So the reason I thought it was Yeoman, here, I'll share this. What do you call a blue sky message? Feels so
Just call it a tweet.
okay. So there's a blue sky tweet that Josh put out talking about Yeoman. I need to look at
Yeah.
this. I guess this is part of what he's doing or his thread. I didn't read everything, admittedly. I just saw that it was Yeoman. So I used Yeoman way back in the day when I was doing WordPress projects. And it sounds kind of similar to what you're talking
Yeah.
about because I could just say, hey, like scaffold out a project and you could customize it based on the things that you wanted, the plugins that I wanted to pull in. But that sounds awesome that he's made it even better.
Yeah. Because I got Flop like had this 4.0 release that got kind of weird. And I haven't updated anything to 4.0 because all of my extensions that I published to
Oh,
NPM don't work anymore. It had something to do with the import process. I don't know.
interesting.
So like I'm kind of in this holding pattern looking for the next best thing.
Okay. I'm glad you told me that because I have a few like that compressed package, it would break, and I use
Yeah.
that every single week. So that's
Yeah.
helpful.
don't update to 4.0 if you're using like third-party installed flop
Okay.
extensions.
Very cool. Yeah, well, and we'll have to have Josh back on to talk about that. He ran SquiggleConf, which is all about tooling and things like that. So that's awesome that he picked that up.
Yes. I need to take a look at it, and then we should have Josh back on.
Get the order right.
So one more recent release that Raycast had was the Focus extension that just came out. Did you see the marketing stuff for that?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Incredible.
incredible.
Yeah. And it's all, again, a free feature. I have never been one to turn on the like web browsing blocking or like lock your phone in a case or lock down apps, just because I'm like, I think I generally have good discipline when it comes to that stuff. But I mean, that was even part of the marketing. Was it Pedro? He released that video where he was saying, like, I don't feel like I need this, but I used it and it was tremendously helpful. And he's right. Like, after I saw that, I think, this is marketing at its best because I was like, I identify with that. I don't feel like I need it, but I'll try this. And it has made a big difference in what I've been able to accomplish. Even if I'm like, okay, I'm just going to crank through this for 30 minutes and let that kind of be the carrot that I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, it's almost just like a single use Pomodoro timer. Like I'm going to work for 30 minutes, and when it dings, I'm going to get up and do something else.
Yeah.
I feel like I have been needing something like that lately.
Really?
Like, my attention is getting worse. I think it's because things at work aren't keeping me as engaged because I keep running into issues, so my mind keeps wanting to wander. And so I've had started to use that Focus extension ever since it came out, and I'm trying to build it into that. Like, it's got to be a habit. I'm going to work on something. I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to go.
So does it log your sessions? Because I'd also like a report at the end of the day that's like you worked through so many Pomodoros or whatever.
That would be cool, but I don't think it does that yet.
Okay.
I wonder if it's going to show up in Wrapped at some point too. Like, you did this many focus sessions or whatever.
Oh, probably. Yeah. Probably.
But they should make like a reporting dashboard for that.
I guess I could use a focus session for this, but it did prompt me this morning to go into my Apple settings and set up focus stuff. I've never used that heavily. So like, your Mac has like different focus settings. I do have like a sleep one so that I'm not going to get spam calls in the middle of the night. I do have one for the kids. So like if the kids reach for my phone, I'll usually turn that setting on so they don't get messages or, certain things like that. The screen adjusts for them. Obviously I don't use that a lot. It's more for the iPad, but since everything syncs. But anyways, I set up a focus session for podcasting because the worst thing that happens is if I get a phone call while we're podcasting or recording and my Mac wants to take over my headphones and all of a sudden I can't hear anything that anybody's saying. I'm just like, oh, end call. And then it'll take a second for my headphones to jump back over. So I set up a focus thing for that. And it's scheduled, so I don't even have to remember to turn it on. Just every Wednesday at 11 a.m., it goes to this focus session. So I'm like, if there's even more integrations like that, or, just the fact that I was like, oh, this would be helpful to set this up as well.
Yeah, I don't know if the Raycast Focus extension blocks notifications. I know they prevent you from opening apps and going to websites. But like, let's say if somebody texted me, is it still going to show up on the screen?
Oh, I don't think so. I think that it locks all that stuff.
That's pretty
because
cool.
like Discord, for example, like that was the whole thing. When I was using Focus the other day, I was getting really distracted by our Discord. We were super loud and just everybody was talking, which was wonderful. I don't regret it or, wish otherwise, but I was like, okay, I've got to focus and I can't let this derail me. So I turned that on and was blocking all those notifications.
No, I'm looking this up. I want to see blocks apps and websites.
Yeah, I don't know how they're doing it if you go to a website, it blocks that particular website too. The other thing that I really like about it is that you can also toggle it. So if you're, say, writing a blog post, you've gone into focus mode, but you have to go look something up online, you've blocked your browser, you can say snooze for 3 minutes. That way you can get the task done. And because it's 3 minutes, it'll ping you so that it's not like I got lost in a rabbit hole or down a rabbit hole trying to find the answer to this thing for the article.
Yeah. It's really good. And again, when that came out, I was like, "Oh god, they're gonna make me pay for it, aren't they?" And they didn't. It's like they still just are doubling down on the free model, and it's so good.
Yeah. I was trying to see what other things that I'm using. They have a QR code generator that I use whenever I'm making presentations. That's really helpful. You just give it the link and it'll give you the QR image that you can like drop into your presentation or something like that. There's also ones that I found for like searching documentation. So Supabase has one for that. Tailwind has one for that that I've also found helpful. And there's one called search emoji and symbols. So I do have Rocket on my machine that's really helpful. So I hit colon and you can type whatever emoji you want to inject. But sometimes I can't remember the name of the emoji. There's a few
Yeah.
that always hang me up. And
Yeah.
so the search emojis and symbols is perfect for that because I can just search what I'm looking for. It also picks up on certain things like the degrees sign. So if I'm working on a website trying to do the design for it, or even just drop that into the code, if I need a degrees symbol or a bullet symbol, I can use that extension to pull those up and I'll copy it to your clipboard and then you can paste it into your project.
Yeah, and all of the built-in, like, things that it does, like converting color or just
Mhm.
the calculator on there is so good. Like, just
Yep.
the anything you can type into that bar it's really powerful.
Yep. I use their snippets in terms of like built-in first party features that replaced there was another one I used to use all the time. Was it Text Snipper? What was the one?
Text
Uh how
TextMate?
terrible is that? I used it maybe I think it might be TextMate. I think I used that for years and now listen to me, I can't even remember the name of the extension, but I moved everything into Raycast and it's been seamless. So I use a bunch of snippets, which when you're talking about my usage, I'm sure that's where a lot of that stuff comes from.
Yep. What's, like, your most complicated snippet and your most used
Oh,
snippet?
that's a good question. How do you find the most used?
I don't know. Would it just like, by your recollection?
I do a lot. Let's see if I can pull up my snippets.
And do you use, like, shortcuts for your snippets too?
So I have a lot of I guess that's what a shortcut is, where you type it in and it'll expand. Text expander was the name of the
Text expander.
yeah, the name of it. So you just type in the shortcut. So the one that I've used the most recently, I was talking to Shonday Person about this on, I think it's Blue Sky, because she was like, when I'm working with AI and coding and I get an error, I just copy and paste that error into AI, Cursor, Claude, whatever, and I say, "Will you help or how do I fix this?" And so I've changed that to a snippet. So I just type semicolon fix and it will expand that. So all the time, I'm just like paste that in, semicolon fix, and it expands that question for me that I shoot off into AI.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that would be cool though. I guess it's a little bit different if you're using Cursor. I was gonna say with like Claude or something like that, if you could set up the Raycast AI
Yeah,
functionality to do all that for you
to do
because
that.
you can incorporate those snippets with their AI features, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
I think my number one snippet right now is Stripe asks a bunch of things about referrals, and I've gotten asked a lot about referring people to jobs at Stripe, and so I have like one response where it's like, "Oh yeah, thanks, I can definitely do that. I need this information from you. Send it to this
Oh,
email."
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So I can look at the ones that I've used today, which is
Mm,
really interesting. Um, I Some of these are not super great. One that I use quite a bit is I type semicolon WIP. So whenever I write commit messages, I include an emoji with them. There's
uh-huh.
um, I guess a
Conventional
project.
commits or whatever that is.
Oh, maybe it's in that one. There's a project called Getmoji where they've assigned an
Yeah.
emoji with every single type of commit, and I use that. So if you look at my Git commit history, some developers have been like, "Oh, it's cute. There's emojis everywhere." And I'm like, "Well, and it has a purpose. I can glance at
Yeah.
any commit and tell you what type of commit it is." So for the work in progress one, it's these uh, a construction sign, and then I just usually type WIP colon and then whatever that is. So instead of having to type all that out with the emoji WIP, I know
Yes.
it sounds so lazy. I just type in WIP in it expands that out for me. I do ones with today's date all the time. So I type semicolon today and it'll expand to whatever today's date is.
Nice.
Which is helpful. I have the typical form ones that you were talking about. So I'll do address, street, email, all those expand out. And then I also have one set up for every single month. So I type M0 for January, but then, and the reason why is because M11 is November. But then you do M12 for December, M2 for February or whatever. So it's a lot easier than trying to type out all the months, especially if I'm filling certain things out, just type in those little key combinations. Just trying to think. Those are actually my most used ones are the months. I also have a few set up for like if we're trying to schedule a guest, I have one for CFM and I'll send out the Savvy Cow link for somebody so I don't have to remember all that stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, that's probably where a lot of them came from was that the snippets.
So do you use colon for your like delimiter for all these?
I use semicolon because I never have.
Semicolon, yeah.
Yeah, you never have a sentence that's gonna or a word that starts with a semicolon.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. I use a double slash a lot of times. Like double slash and then whatever you want after it.
Yeah. The Rocket for the emojis, it uses a colon, which can sometimes be annoying when I'm typing code because you do need the colon for things.
Yep. Let's see. That's pretty much all the extensions. You want to talk about like extending Raycast, developing for Raycast?
Yeah. So this was kind of an interesting story. We've talked about our Discord. We were talking about Raycast and because Focus had just come out. And I thought Focus is great, but what about I knew I needed to leave my computer. I had to go walk the dogs, but I was putting it off because I knew usually if I get up and I walk away and I come back, when I come back, I've got to get my head back in the right space and try and remember what I was working on. And I wanted to stay focused. So I was like, what if you have a thing where it's like refocus, where I can type something in to say, hey, this is my intention when I sit back down. And so I have never coded a Raycast extension. So I was curious, what does this whole process even look like? And I was blown away by the developer experience. So there is built into Raycast almost like a command or short key to be able to do that. You just type like, I don't even remember, create extension. And you can hit that and it will it'll put the folder and all the things that you need for your extension on your computer. You just tell it where all that stuff needs to go. So it's super easy to get started. And then for the extension idea that I had, like I said, I've never coded a Raycast extension. It was Saturday and I just thought, how fast could I do this with AI? Everybody's talking about how fast AI is. AI codes all this stuff. I'm going to have AI write this extension for me. And so I prompt engineered the whole thing, which was kind of an interesting experience. It did take slightly a little bit longer than I thought it should. I still did it in probably an hour and a half. But I was just thinking like, oh, I can be done in 30 minutes, 15 minutes.
And how did you, like, what were you using? What was are you using Cursor to do all this or?
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I can share a link to this. I'll grab it in just a second. I'll tell the story and then I'll grab the link. So there's somebody created this blog post on dev.to of Cursor stuff and how they're using Cursor. And I finally took the time to say, okay, I'm going to do a deep dive on Cursor and figure out how can I make the most out of this. I was blown away by some of these features. And we can kind of go off on a tangent and talk about that in a minute. But with Cursor, what you can do is you can go to the composer. So the composer is more of like, I want you to compose the code for me and modify my files. Chat is, I'm just going to tell you what to modify. And then you have to go in and copy paste yourself. So you can go into Composer and you can say and then type in docs, and then you tell it what you want to do. So I have Raycast. So if you search for Raycast, I don't think it's in their official directory. I mean, it may be now, but what you can do is if it doesn't show up is you can send it a link to say, in this case, the Raycast documentation. And so then it will scrape all of the Raycast documentation so it knows how to write a Raycast extension.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy, right? So then I tell Raycast what I'm trying to do. Now, I think the thing that gets people, if you haven't coded with AI before, is it's not like I can just say, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to do this app. Like I was explaining before, you have to be a little bit more intentional and walk it through step by step in order to get the best results. And even with that said, there was one point where I was like, oh, just scrap it and I'll start over using some of the prompts and the things that I know. But because I know enough about engineering, I could say this is what I want to happen. Or I also had the Raycast documentation up to know this is the keyword that I want to use. This is the function I want to call,
Right.
or this is their UI component. But then it would write all of that code for me, which is amazing. The biggest holdup in it that probably took the longest was what I wanted to do. I'm not sure is doable. And Cursor didn't tell me that. It was like trying to make it work. And so finally, I think I went to Perplexity, so another AI system, and asked Perplexity, and Perplexity was like, yeah, you can't do that. So my initial thought was, when I sit down at the computer after I've walked away, have like a mouse move or a keyboard key stroke trigger this pop-up to come up. And really, if you're away from your computer, the pop-up doesn't need to be gone. You can just leave with the pop-up on your screen. So
Right.
that's what I ended up creating. It's super minimal, but when I get ready to leave, I type refocus into Raycast. I tell it what I want to refocus on, and then it's like a dialog box that says okay. And I just leave that on my screen. I can walk away, and then when I come back, I have to click on okay. So if I do something else, that's fine. That's a decision. But at least I've reminded myself this was my intention when I sit back down.
Um, does Raycast have like an option, like built-in UI for this dialog box?
Yeah. Yeah. They have several different UI options. And so that was another little sticking point, was I wanted a toast message to come up. And if
Yeah.
you use a toast component, it will stick it at the bottom of your Raycast window. And that's not where
Yeah.
I wanted it to show up.
You want to be front and center.
Right, right. And so then they also have this show HUD, which I don't do you know what that stands for?
HUD, heads up display.
Oh, there you go. I'm like, what is this? I've heard it before. I just don't remember. So it's like if you enable, say, Raycast Focus, it'll say Raycast Focus enabled or something at the bottom of your screen. I should know what that is. I'm a UI designer. That's funny. But anyways, that'll come up at the bottom. So at first it was like, that was the pop-up. Yeah, we've enabled your refocus, but then it would go away. And I'm like, no, I need to stick
Yeah.
around. So some of it, the back and forth, was trying to figure out what component is going to work for this situation.
So you use Toast.
That's right.
Okay. That's one of my favorite things about
Oh,
Raycast is go ahead.
I was going to say, it started off with Toast. Cursor eventually migrated over to a Apple system dialog box.
Oh, so you used an Apple script to kick that
Mhm.
off?
That's right. That's right.
Oh, cool.
But
They
I
have
mean,
an alert that looks like it might work as well.
probably
Yeah.
the notification system, like you could hook into the Apple notification system where it would go in the
Yeah.
top right. But I was like, I want it front and center, can't ignore me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's like one of the things I love about Raycast extension development is it's very straightforward.
mhm.
They give you all the UI components
Yeah.
and they kind of give you enough guardrails to make your extension feel good, even if you're like a crappy designer. Like
Yeah.
they know what it should look like, and your experience will always feel like everybody else's experience in
Yeah.
Raycast.
Yeah. And it's you can just write React components. That was the other thing that Brad,
Yes,
it's like, this is incredible. You're
it's so
using
good.
tools that you already know or that I know as a front end developer, to be able to get everything to work.
Yeah, and so okay, I'll talk about my Stripe extension. In order to accomplish this, like to fill out a checkout form with a test card, you had to like start the extension, search for what test card you want, and so I had them in categories. Like here's the declined cards, here's the successful cards, here's the cards by country, and it was just a big list. And you type in what you want, and it fuzzy searches by the name, and I used AI to get that entire list. So I copy and pasted the entire Stripe docs page of test cards, threw it into Chat GPT and said, "Give me the cards in JSON format." Done. Like it was so
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
Massage the data with AI a little bit. And then so yeah, I made like the filterable list. And then when you press enter on that card, you could do a couple things. Like the other shortcuts could send you the documentation or whatnot. When you press enter on the card, it goes through a series of keystrokes via an Apple script that fills out the checkout form. It'll dynamically calculate the expiration date and things like that for you. And again, when it came to AppleScript, I was like, I don't know how to write AppleScript. So I asked AI to do it. I was able to like template it out and like dynamically inject the data that I wanted. And like it was very easy to get up and running.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that I'm curious what your conclusion is. But when I hear people talk about using AI to write code for me, I think the larger the application gets, the harder it is for AI to keep all that stuff in context. So that piece of it kind of gives me the peace of mind that my job is not going to just disappear overnight. It's just a different kind of thinking. And the fact that I can still walk through the logic and tell AI what it is, like I'm still the one driving it. It makes me feel like AI is more of a calculator than it is like the driver.
I got two thoughts there. So first, I think that context windows are still getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to reach a point where you can just say like, I'm running it in this application folder, go.
Mm-hmm.
Use these external web resources, go. Like, could you imagine you just gave it a
Yeah.
folder and some links and it knows that's its context.
Yep.
We'll get there because that's just technology slowly evolving, like a computer getting faster. AI is going to
Mm-hmm.
take more context. But the second thing is I think the experience needs to be different. Freaking Copilot popping up and like interrupting my flow, suggesting some dumb crap all the time, like makes me mad.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather have like I'm gonna sit down and build this feature, and you open up like a voice console where very interactively you're saying, okay, let's make a component called this. Here's what it's gonna do. No, change that type definition to this, and you're just like having this conversation with an interface and like confirming or denying along the way. Like that, I think is really what's going to be like the future. And I think about like uh Selma, who is going through like
Mm-hmm.
RSI or something right now, and she was posting some videos of just getting destroyed by this really dumb voice command stuff. And if you could integrate that so well, that would be amazing for that accessibility aspect of things as well. Ooh, what's
I
this?
think Cassidy. Oh, that's the link that I mentioned earlier that I would
Yeah.
share. Cassidy Williams, she had shared. I'll share this. I need to do a deep dive, but she put this on her blog about Brain Story. So Brain Story was part of the previous startup that she was a part of, where it was using AI to help refine your ideas. So you could say like, I have an idea, and then the AI would just kind of talk back to you and help you kind of go down different directions that you might not, or pathways that you hadn't necessarily thought about. So she took, I think all that stuff is now maybe open source, but with GitHub Copilot extensions, she was kind of able to resurrect this idea and do a lot of the voice stuff through GitHub Copilot.
Oh my
So
God, that's
it
awesome.
reminded me a lot of what you're talking about, but I think in this case, the purpose is more of like refining your ideas versus writing code. But I don't see why those two couldn't like work together, or like you couldn't kind of pull in exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and this is Copilot extensions is what
Mhm.
she was leveraging to do this.
That's
Very
right.
cool. Yeah, you just change the text box to be a voice thing and
Mhm.
like that's it.
It's so funny because like I know it's a podcast, but like as an introvert developer, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to use my voice. I'm just going to type everything out, or I think about texting. I still will sit there and text everything out, whereas I'll be around other people and they're like, dictating all the time. They don't
Yeah.
type anything. Uh, so I guess it's just a different workflow, because I have had moments lately where I'm like, I could say this so much faster than I can type, and I can type fast. I was like, I could just knock it out.
I could just see myself like this.
Laid back.
Laid back. Copilot, do this. Give me a React component.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh man, I have Siri. Let's hope she doesn't. Siri trained to hear my voice, and she'll only respond to my voice. And so my kids have a thing right now where they always try and see
Yeah.
who can trigger
Yeah.
her.
I
I'm
love
like,
that
she won't
feature.
listen to you. She won't listen to you. So, oh, good deal. Well, we're about at the hour. Do you want to do picks and plugs, or is there anything that we didn't mention that you want to talk about?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, let's do picks and plugs.
Okay. And I will do kind of a behind the scenes shout out. We're going to have Michael Chan on next week. So we're going to talk all about productivity and things like that. The episode that actually your very first episode, Brad, was all about productivity and has been one of our most popular episodes. I know I learned a lot in that, and I'm just always interested to hear other people's setups. So Michael is also passionate about that. So we'll have him on.
Yeah. And
I
we'll
like
talk
mixed
to him
up
about
what
his
I call him.
Raycast setup.
Yeah. I'll mix it. Sometimes I'll call him Chan. Chantastic.
Yeah.
Pick a name. Awesome. So for the next segment of the show, we're going to do picks and plugs where we pick something that we like and plug something generally that we've worked on. Do you have picks and plugs?
Yes. I've been playing another video game.
Have you? Which one?
Balatro. I don't really know how to pronounce
Never
it.
heard of that one.
It's a card game based around poker, but it's also like they call it a roguelite where every round you start over. Like so the beginning of
Ah,
every game looks exactly the same and you kind of get more powerful as
interesting.
you get to the end of the round and either you win or you lose and then you start over right back in the same position. Um the main kicker in the game is there's these joker cards that like change the way your poker hands are scored. And so by the end of the game, or if you get really good, you could be making scores in the hundreds of millions.
Oh,
And so
wow.
it scales crazy and it uses scientific explanation if your hands get that big at the
What?
end.
That's crazy.
Yeah, really cool. I've beaten the like final boss 2 or 3 times and now I'm working on like unlocking a whole lot more stuff and like
Okay.
playing the game on higher difficulties. It's been a lot of fun.
Did you see they announced the Switch 2?
Yes, I'm super excited about it. I showed it to my son. It looks really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, so my kids, we gave them Mario Party, the latest one for Christmas. And
Ooh, was it
so,
good? I
yeah,
almost got it the other day.
yes, yes. That's so we had Monday off from school for
Yep.
Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That's all my kids did. Was play Mario Party all day. They loved it. Just trying to unlock all the characters and all the different mini games. So they've had a blast doing that. So maybe, maybe that'll be my pick.
Sweet.
Kind of that is my pick. What about your plug, Brad? You gonna do your Blue Sky?
Plug, just hit me up on Blue Sky.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll do Mario Party as my pick since I kind of hijacked Brad's turn. And for my plug, I'm going to plug Blue Sky to compete with Brad. But I am doing Build 12. So you can go to build12spelledout.com where I'm doing 12 applications in 1 year. So I need to post an update there. But the first app that I'm building is called Part-Time Startup, where it's just a community for developers to help each other as we're trying to develop apps because there's so much more stuff that goes into app building than just the code and executing piece of it. There's the marketing, the business side of it, the sales, the pricing, all those things. So hopefully that'll community will help anybody that is trying to build an application like I am. So check that out. Build12.com and Blue Sky.
Sweet.
Awesome. Well, it has been a fun one. Thanks everybody for hanging out. If you are listening and you're a podcatcher of choice, please leave a rating and review. That's how other people find it. For now, that's all we got. Sweet. There was something I was gonna. I think that was it. I've just been going so. We didn't talk about NPM packages, so I'll do
No.
this for the post show really quick. You
Yeah,
put a
I'm
note in here
curious.
how you met James.
Yeah, that's how I met James. He was trying to publish an NPM package on his Twitch stream, and I had like just gotten done like doing a few, and I started like just responding a lot. And then he's like, "Do you want to come on the show and like teach me how to do it?"
He's
And
so
like
good about that.
that's how we became friends.
He's so good about that. So after I coded the Raycast extension, I was like, okay, I have this NPM package that I've wanted to release forever. I'm going to see if I can finish it with AI. And I
Ah,
finished it with AI and got it all wrapped up and published. So, and then I designed a landing page around it. So I still have to release the landing page, but it is called Lemon Lime SVGs. So instead of Sprite, lemon lime soda, lemon lime SVGs. And all it does is it takes a folder of SVGs and converts that into a Sprite. Now, I know if you go on NPM, you will find a million of these packages. There's nothing new about that. But the code that I am using, I've been carrying around from project to project to project, which is why I'm like, I just need an NPM package to be able to manage that. And so the code is based out of the same icon SVG Sprite package or file script that Kent Dodds has in his Epic Web package. So it's all that. The only difference is because it's an NPM package, I do have a setup command in there just so that it is reusable. You can code in there. This is where I want the folders to go. This is where I want my type folder to go for this particular project. So there's some configuration in there that added an additional function. But the thing is, you're not going to like release that with your final project. That's really just a build piece for dev. So I think that like even with the additional function, it's not going to make a difference in your final project size.
Right. Did you namespace it or did you release it like generally? Like, did you
That's a
at
good
self teach
question.
me
I think
/
it's at self teach me.
Yeah.
And what is your recommendation?
I namespace all of my stuff just because like I don't want naming collisions and I want to name it exactly what I want. And I want people to understand that when I build things, they're mostly for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm going to build something that's like, I truly want to like everybody to use, like my Hue SDK or something, my Philips Hue SDK. I think I did not namespace that because it's like you want it to show up. Sometimes you think, oh, if somebody namespaced it, it's like a pet project or something.
I see. This is so funny. If you go to my NPM profile, it says I've released 97 packages, which is, it just makes me
Redwood?
giggle because it's all Redwood stuff except for the
Yeah.
last one. So you have to scroll down 96 packages of those. And then there's the one that I created. I'll include a direct link to that
No,
one.
I've done 33 and they're all mine.
Look at you. That's
Yeah, just
amazing. I mean,
little
talk about
stuff.
a great portfolio though, you know?
Yeah.
So this is also kind of, I was mentioned build 12. That's what got me thinking about this package again, was I'm like, how can I move faster and what pieces can I take from project to project? I think one of the things that's been appealing to me, Brad, about how you work is that you're like, I'm all in on Remix. Just gonna get my setup honed in and dialed in, and I just know this is how I do it. And I did the comparing frameworks project last year. I need to finalize all that stuff and wrap it up. But the thing was, I built the same application in 6 different frameworks. And so I go in these mental circles of, but this framework gives you, say, RSC, but this framework gives you GraphQL, or this one has built in auth support. You know, there's all these different things that make one framework enticing over the other. And so then I'll like start to build it one way and I'll hit an edge and be like, oh, well, maybe I should do it this other way. And then I'll end up rewriting it. It's like, no, just go all in, say, this is what I'm going to do. And when you hit those hard problems, then that's when you write these packages and bring them with you to the next project. So kind of has me rethinking or thinking about my strategy for the rest of the year.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're going to stay all in that JavaScript, TypeScript ecosystem, you know, you can reuse that in so many ways. So have you committed to Next then for all of these projects this year?
No, definitely not. I'll be building some stuff in Redwood.
Gotcha.
And, you know, I think, I don't know, I might end up with a Laravel project or two. Some of it's just also, you know, as a framework maintainer, trying to see what everybody else is doing. And it's not jealousy or anything like that. It's more of what can we learn from each other and what are all these patterns? And as I'm traveling around teaching other people, I want to be knowledgeable to say like, yes, this is the pattern that Next uses. This is what we do in Redwood, or this is the pattern that Remix uses. And this is why we decided to do something different with Redwood. So it really is just as much about the education piece of it. So it's, you know, not just because I'm building something in another framework that I have, you know, a preference for one. It's really the education and the learning piece just as much.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again, everybody, for hanging out. We'll go ahead and end the stream. But again, we'll have Michael Chan on next week. So you can tell I'm excited about it. But until then.
See you.